Good day, everyone. The first part of our presentation gave you an overview with regards to lesson planning. So by this time, we will try to proceed with the next topics with regards to lesson planning. Specifically, I will be discussing to you about the advantages and the steps involved in lesson planning. So this is Marierose Ancheta, and I will be discussing to you the said topics. Let's start with the advantages of lesson planning. So based on our presentation, you can see here that there are 4 advantages that are already enumerated. The first one is that it keeps the teacher to be systematic and orderly in the treatment of the subject matter. As we all know, in the lesson plan, we are trying to follow certain steps or certain procedures in the delivery of our lesson. And with the steps that are enumerated or with the procedure that we are following in our lesson plan, we are assured that we are able to deliver everything that we need to deliver with regards to our subject matter. And of course, we are assured that we are not able to forget something in relation to our subject matter. The next advantage that we can get from lesson planning is that the teacher set forth with some definite aims in view and is conscious of the interests and attitudes that he is to develop in the students through certain activities or some other means. So through lesson planning, we are able to consider the capabilities of our students and of course their interests and attitudes. In this way, we are able to set objectives that are in relation to their interests. And of course, if we are able to achieve this, or if we are trying to consider their interests and attitudes, we are able to come up with activities that we know that they can find enjoyable and of course, something that would engage them more with our lesson. The next advantage that we can get is that it gives confidence and self-reliance to the teacher, which is of great value for successful teaching. Of course, if we know to ourselves that we know what we are doing in the delivery of our lesson, it gives us the confidence and self-reliant that we are able to effectively teach that subject matter. And of course, if we are confident of the things that we are telling our students with regards to our subject matter, it would also give them the idea that we are teaching them the right things with regards to the subject matter at hand. And of course, the last advantage that we can get from lesson planning is that it saves time. Of course, if we already know what are the things that we want our students to learn, if we are able to make the necessary preparations for the delivery of our subject matter, it really saves time. And of course, the time that we are able to save from preparing our lesson and all other things can be spent in the teaching learning process. So by this time, we are already able to deliver our lesson effectively, and of course, our students or learners are able to learn something. So after knowing the different advantages that we can get from lesson planning, let us now move on with the steps involved in lesson planning. Specifically, we are considering here the Herbartian steps. The first one is the preparation of introduction. So what are we supposed to do on this step? The first thing that we need to do is to prepare the students to receive new knowledge. So how are we supposed to prepare our students to receive new knowledge? The first thing that we can do is that to let them see the connection between the past lesson and the new lesson. So we will go back to their past memories or their past ideas with regards to a certain topic, and then we will try to establish the link of the past lesson to the new lesson now. In that way, we are able to establish the continuity of the lessons that we are trying to teach them. And of course, we are able to get their attention by means of relating those ideas from the past and of course, the ideas now for the present lesson. The next step after the preparation of the introduction is the presentation of the lesson. So what are the things that we should do in order for us to effectively present our lesson? The first one is that we should clearly state our aims or our objectives. It is very important also for us to state our aims and objectives so that our learners are directed and are guided of the things that they should do or of the things that they will learn at the end of the lesson. The next thing that we should do in the presentation of our lesson is that they should get new ideas and of course actively participate all throughout the delivery of the lesson. So for this part, questioning is very important. So why is there a process of questioning now? Since we are trying to get also their past ideas or past memories, it's very important that the question that we will ask to them will really stimulate their past memories or past ideas. In that way, we can really get the answer or the concept that we really want to get from our learners. And also, in presenting our lessons, we can present it through new materials or by means of concrete objects or actual experiences. As we all know, learners learn effectively through direct experiences or actual experiences. So it's very important that in presenting our lesson, we should be able to give them some concrete examples and of course, some concrete experiences wherein we are sure that they can relate. Okay, so after the presentation, the third step now is the comparison or association. So for this step, we as the teacher should provide some examples wherein the learners are now to observe and compare the things that they are able to see on those examples. Through observing and comparing, they are able to tell the similarities and differences, which allows them to implant new ideas in their minds. So, by means of comparing the similarities and differences of the examples given, they are now able to implant new ideas onto their mind, which leads now to new learnings. So after the comparison or association, the fourth step now is the generalization. So for the generalization, what we are trying to establish now is that knowledge that is beyond the level of perception and concrete. What we are trying now to achieve here is the so-called reflective thinking, which means that the students now are able to reflect on the concepts that they are able to learn. And then they will think how to apply these concepts onto their real life or daily experiences. And by this stage or by this step, we can make sure that the aim of the lesson that we stated during our introduction is already achieved. And of course, the last step on the lesson planning is the application. Application is a very important plan or part of lesson planning, since on this stage, we are able to see how our learners are able to apply the learned concepts to their everyday life and everyday activities. But what I would like to emphasize on this part is that, according to Mr. Herbert, what he is trying to achieve is not the type of learning that is purely utilitarian. Which means when we speak of the utilitarian learning, we are only trying to develop the cognitive aspect of the learner, which by Mr. Herbert is not as effective as trying to develop a learner who is holistically developed. Which means for the applications, it's not enough for him that the student is able to learn every concept and is able to store all the informations onto his mind, but rather the learner should be able to apply those learnings into their daily experiences so that they can be considered as a functional mind and a functional learner to the society. And of course, they are able to see the world on a different aspect and they will be able to interpret life. Okay, so basically, those are the things that we need to consider, or those are the things that we need to learn if we are trying to consider the steps involved in lesson plan. Next now are the things or the questions that are frequently asked in relation to the development of a lesson plan. So the first question now is that, why should I develop and use lesson plan? So developing a lesson plan will help you decide how you will teach a lesson. So basically, we can consider lesson plan as a blueprint of how we will deliver our lesson to our learners. So it's very important for us to consider what are the things that we should do and what are the necessary preparations that we should make in order for us to effectively deliver our lesson. So next question is that, how much time does it take to develop a lesson plan? As a general rule, plan for an hour to prepare for each hour of instruction. So as much as possible, you can utilize 1 hour maybe in devising your lesson plan. But if there are instances that you are unfamiliar with the content, you may spend a little more time in developing your lesson plan. And on this way, you will be able to assess your learners' skill level and of course their difficulties with regards to the lesson. The next question now is that, how do I develop a lesson plan? Okay, so we have here 5 things to consider in the development of the lesson plan. So kindly read it. So, and also, lesson planning is not new to us already. We basically know how the lesson plan works. Okay, so these are the steps that you are to consider or to do in lesson planning. Okay, the next question now is that, how will you present the lesson? So on the presentation of the lesson, we have 8 phases. The first phase now is the introduction. As you can notice, the phases now here are related to the Herbartian steps, which was discussed a while ago. So if you would try to look on the phase 1, which is on introduction, in short, we can say that the phase 1 of the presentation of the lesson involves us teachers to motivate our students to participate on our lesson. So it is a means wherein we will try to motivate them, we will try to engage them on our lesson and all throughout the delivery of the lesson. So that is phase 1. The next phase now is the phase 2, which is on the foundation. So on this phase, it's very important for us teachers to know where our students are, which means we can ask them what are their ideas with regards to their concepts and so on and so forth. And if there are instances that you are able to encounter misconceptions with regards to a certain concept, this is the time wherein you can correct these misconceptions so that you can be able to establish a better foundation for the learning of the new concept. Okay, so that is phase 2. The next phase now is the phase 3, which is on brain activation. So if you would notice, this phase involves a lot of questioning process wherein students will try to ask questions, and of course, you as a teacher will also try to ask them some questions. So by this time, it is very important that there will be an exchange of informations or exchange of ideas between the teacher and the learners so that you can be able to engage them all throughout the lesson. And of course, you will be able to see who can actively participate on the discussion of the lesson. So there should be an exchange of ideas between the teacher and the learner. So it's not necessarily that on this part, the teacher would do all the talking while the students would just listen to the teacher. It's not that. So it's very important also that from time to time, there should be an interaction between the teacher and of course the student or the learner. Next, the next phase now is the phase 4, which is body of new information. So for this part, it's very important that there should be a discussion. So it's not necessarily that you would only provide them something to read or something to watch or something to do. It's very important also that on this phase or on this stage, there should be a discussion between the teacher and the learner. So maybe you could allow them to read, and after some time, you will be discussing also the concepts or the things that they were able to read from that certain material in order for them to better understand what they were able to encounter. So it's very important that there should be a discussion on this phase of the presentation of the lesson. Okay, the next phase now is that phase 5, which is on clarification. So for this phase, you should check for understanding with sample problems, situations, or questions. So it's like this is the part where you would ask, is there any question, or what are the things that need to be clarified, and so on and so forth. So you can also allow your students to work on something, and if there are instances that they are able to or they are not able to understand something on that problem, you can go check up on them and of course explain to them the thing that they need to do in order to successfully answer that question. Okay, so that is your phase 5. Okay, so for phase 6, which is on practice and review. So by this phase or by this stage, we should include some examples where they will try to solve with teacher supervision. So there are instances where we can give them some sit work to do, and then we can go some rounds wherein we will try to see whether they are able to follow the steps, for example, in solving a certain problem. So there should be still teacher supervision on this phase while allowing the learner to solve the problems on their own. Okay, so phase 7 is the independent practice. So by this time, you should supervise students' independent practice. So there are instances also that on phase 6, you can give them some works or individual works wherein they can have a small group discussion. But by phase 7, we have to make sure that they will do the work individually, and of course, they will try to solve it on their own. But still, there should be supervision also from the teacher. Okay? And then, of course, phase 8 is the closure. So, by this time, we should be able to summarize the things that we are able to discuss. And, of course, we should also teach our students to synthesize. Meaning, they should be able to apply what they have learned from the learning of the concept up until the application of the concept, and of course trying to solve the problems that were given to them. So by this time on the closure, they should be able now to summarize all of the concepts, and they are now able to understand the concepts that we are trying to teach them. And of course, if we say synthesize, they are now able to apply it on their own.